Hey guys, it's been a while since I told an Uber story. I've gotten inboxes about it, so I kind of wanted to come on here and do one real quick. While I'm recovering, I'm not working as hard as I'm getting better, but I'll go ahead and tell this story as fast as I can. It's a long one, and I just hope I can get all the details in there. Okay, so I go to one of these extended stays to pick up somebody. The reason why I mentioned extended stay because that's a part of the story, and it says this person is a guest of somebody else. I was like, okay, so that means that they set up an Uber account. They using their Uber account to give somebody else a ride. You can do that. And so the guy gets in the car. He sits right behind me, right there, and he starts talking about children and how it's hard to raise kids now because kids don't listen, blah blah blah. And I have 3 adult children, so I understand where he was coming from, whatever. So we just talked about that, and then as we're getting on the road, he starts telling me about how he's very protective of people who stay in this extended stay, and he frequents the homeless community, sharing meals with them and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, okay, that's cool. So he says that he's an uncle to some of the kids, and this particular kid, he got him a scooter, and one of the individuals from the unhoused community stole the scooter. And so he told me that he got word that the man traveled out of town. So he went to the place where the man was supposedly gone to. He said, I drove by where they said he would be in a bus, a van, a truck. I rode by on a bicycle. He said, I came by every day for a week looking for this man because I wanted a scooter back. And I said, friend, why you just didn't buy him another scooter at this point? I mean, he said, that's not the principle of the thing. He said, the principle of the thing is he took it from a struggling friend of mine. It was a gift. I was like, I got it. He said, after a couple days, I came back, and he said, I went back to the community and I asked around. He said, I initially ran up on somebody that knew who he was, and he said, I said, can you take me to him? He said, I put some names back. He said, I ran up to him, put a gun in his face, and I said, I asked you for that scooter, and you told me that you would bring it back when you're good and ready. He was like, now you got to answer for that. And he said the dude started crying and screaming. I guess release his bowels because of fear, whatever. And while the guy was telling me the story, I'm watching him in the mirror, and I'm looking at his face, and his face took on this crazy, deranged look. And I was like, you all right back there? He was like, yeah, I'm good. He said, I just don't like being betrayed. He said, I just did 35 years. And I was just blinking like, I said, you did 35 years? I said, friend, what did you do? 35 years is a lifetime. I said, you don't look very old. No, you look like a kid. He goes, yeah, I'm in my 40s. I went down at 15. I said, oh, okay. He was like, my sentence was 65 years. He said, I killed 2 people. I said, you killed 2 people at 15? And he was like, yeah. He said, I was a stick-up boy. I killed, I stole, I took what I wanted, I did what I did, I got what I wanted, and that's what I did. And I said, why do you feel so free to tell me your story? And he said, I don't know, I feel like I can talk to you. I said, since you said that, I'm going to tell what you did the other day is going to put you back in there for another 35 years. I said, because you don't seem like you've changed. And he was like, I'm trying to be a good person. I'm trying, but I just can't take nobody betraying me. I can't. And I said, friend, you said you killed 2 people. Have you killed more? And he was like, yeah. Yes, I have. He was like, I just can't take nobody betraying me. I don't want to tell too much of the story, because he did tell me his whole life story. He did tell me his name. He did tell me where he committed the crime. I looked him up. I verified his story. I seen his mug shots. I looked at some of his court proceedings, trials, all of that. All of that was legit. I had a whole murderer in the back seat riding right here behind me. Did I feel unsafe? No, I really didn't. I don't know, maybe it was just like kind of exciting because I never been so close to somebody that I actually knew that had done something like that. But what I really wanted was for him to talk about his story, because whenever he would talk about something that somebody did to him, his whole face would change. He would be a different person. Like, he told me about his experience in prison where he went in as a 15-year-old child and how men wanted to try to rape him because he was a 15-year-old child. And, or can you say rape or graped or whatever the word is? I don't know. I don't want my video to get censored. But then I asked him, I said, listen, I mentor boys. That's what I've done for years. And I said, I have to ask you some questions. I said, who raised you? And he said, my mom, but she was in and out. She was in the streets. She was, high and all this other stuff. And I say that because he told me some other stuff about some activities that he's been involved in since he's been out this 1 year. And I said, you're going to go back if you don't stop. He's like, no, I'm good. I know how to beat it now. I know how to beat the system because I studied law while I was in there and all that other stuff. And I said, where was your daddy at? And he said, my daddy told me he didn't know if I was his and he didn't care, so I didn't care. And he said, I don't care if he dies tomorrow. I don't give a damn. I don't care. And so I was like, wow. So you went to prison, you did all this time. As a child, you had to fend for yourself. And the only thing you knew to do was to get what you wanted the best way that you could. The only way that you could was by taking it. And you've been living your life like that all this time. And then he told me, he said, my son is in prison too. I said, whoa, wait, you had a son? You have a son? And he goes, yeah. I was like, dang, you went in at 15, so you was really wilding and being grown in these streets. And so I was not fearful of him. I ain't gonna lie, I was a little scared that he was gonna ask for a phone number or something, because I didn't know how I was gonna turn him down. But he didn't ask. Thank you, Jesus. He didn't ask. So I didn't know how I was gonna answer that. But I just wanted to share that story with y'all. Wow, we just don't know people's story. I don't give anybody an excuse, but it's sad if you ever listen to somebody's life and how their life went. This man was 48 years old and been in prison over 35 years for crimes he committed when he was 15, and he probably really still should be in there. Served his time, still hasn't changed. I just wanted to share that story with y'all.